But you can select any one of these. Okay, and then now you have a couple of choices. If you want to drill down to the document that this comes from, in this case it's an invoice, you come up here, you highlight the hyperlink, and here you are looking at payables, transaction entry zone. So here's the details of the payable. From here you can go into the distribution, or you can see how it's been applied. So if you want to know what payment applied to that invoice, you can go this way. And if you have an issue where you have credit memos and you have an invoice that's applied against many things, you'll see all of the things that it's been applied against here. The other way you can go, here's your distribution that was assigned. Also, you can do the unapplied will basically take you to that same apply screen. Now, what you can do on the screen, if you'll drop this little button down here, open, this is the unapplied amount. So if you ever see a number there, that means I've got an invoice that's got an open amount, and you'll then be able to drill in and see any unapplied amount. I don't think this customer has any, probably not. But if you had an invoice that had some application to it, or had some amount open, you would see an unapplied amount. So, why is this a big deal? Because, well, why would you end up doing this when we have Image Now, right? Seems kind of crazy. Well, there is obviously in Great Plains, you have a better feel for what's going on in that company. But let's now take you over into Perceptive Content, Image Now. And has anybody ever done anything with this little button here?
No.
Here's what I'm about to teach you. So, hopefully I've given you. This is Image Now magic. Based on the screen that you have open and what you're working on. Image Now, we've built an Image Now to go in and go on the screen, and based on where you are on that screen, look at what you're looking at, and go bring up the invoice of interest in Image Now and open it.
Can you do that with the check stub? If you recreated the check stub?
The checks. No, this is going to be from an inquiry. These are the places we can do it from. In a moment, I'll show you the inquiry rewrote, but you don't obviously you wouldn't have the group record payroll advice. You guys don't have access to those. But if you're here, we were on the payables. This is the. Let me close this out and get this out of the way here. So I'm going to zoom in on one of these transactions. Let's not do that because that's not here, 2015. We're going to do something that's we started in 2017, 16.
Oh, wait, doing the application.
Yeah, no.
Sure.
So here's one, I'm going to do this. So I am in the Payables Transaction Entry Zoom window. Come here, look here, Payables Transaction Entry Zoom. If I've done this well, cross my fingers. If it works right, voila. I did not have to go into Image Now, remember the invoice number, copy it down, type it over again.
So this will only work though within, it has of the date you set up applications?
Yes, so, no, not the applications, Image Now.
Oh, we had that back in like, what, 08?
Oh, wait.
Did we?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Has it really been that long? No, honestly, was it 08?
Payables? Dan
Perceptive Content came around.
Perceptive Content.
But Image Now, I mean, it's the same, it's just the name.
Perceptive Content and Image Now is one and the same.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been since 08?
Yeah.
Time flies.
Wasn't that?
Going out to Ag and working with Danny on it?
Guys, this next week, September 5th, is my 30th anniversary, so okay, you can see how bad it is. Anyway, yes, the idea is it goes onto the screen, figures out where you are, and then tries to bring up the matching document. It's running a query based on information it gathered off the screen, but rather than having to type that. Now again, this is obviously in GP, because I don't know how often you really do inquiries there. Most of your time, you're probably doing them in a different place. So let's show you that. Why not? Yes, so most of the time, let me close that. I'm going to just drop that away. Okay, so let me go ahead and close this one. So most of the time, you're probably doing it through here. using it because most of your inquiries are in image now.
Yes.
Okay, well, then,
Yeah,
I won't even show you, no.
That's an
I'll show you, let me show you this one.
I think
This?
that shows more.
Where
is that, in the front end?
Oh, really? What's going on?
Payables inquiry, it's the smiley face, payables inquiry, AP inquiry.
Is it in the front end?
It's
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
front.
Okay.
So, the advantage of this is it crosses companies. So if you're working in one, so does Image Now, okay? But this has some of these stuff kind of already on the screen for you, like instead of having to use some of the queries, this is just another way to do it. But the idea is you can put in document information. So this was I built this before Image Now.
So would you be able to pull up an invoice from, is it the transaction summary?
Transaction
Summary
entry.
window?
Was it the Zoom?
Pay, it's a Zoom. So the places you can see, what you'll do is you bring up, you can use these windows. Payables apply Zoom, payables payment Zoom, transaction entry, and the AP inquiry, and our inquiry apply to. So one of the things you might be interested in is one of the options here. If you click on an item and you push J, for those that have job detail. So this is an entry, so this will let you go, if it has job detail, it will bring the job detail up. And that is one. If you double click on it, let me get my double clicking working here. You double click, it's your apply to, okay? So which is, in this case, that's the payment. I double click the payment, it's the distribution. So it's not unlike the other screens, but I can get down where this is a little different because I'll talk about Image Now and what it can do and can't do. So yes, you can bring up the form and you can see all the distribution. So just a different way of looking at it. And the idea is, yes, from here, if I'm looking at that, and I'm on the payables inquiry. There's the invoice. And it, like anything else in Image Now, when we get into that, if you like some of these others that you use, you can make, this is, in Image Now, whenever you drop the box down, you see a checkbox next to that, that's your default. So if I was gonna run this, all I have to do is click that button there and it would run that. So whichever one, if you wanted to change this to be, that one to be your default, you can set that as default action. Again. So, those are some of the magic that we can do inside of Image Now. Okay, we're gonna run into Image Now, perceptive content, one and the same. They just changed the name. They've been bought out 3 times, and now they're owned by Highland Corporation. They're probably, I think they'll change the name again at some point. Okay, let me pull this out of the way. Okay, so what I want to go through here is I just want to talk about, hopefully I have nothing in my workbook here, nice and empty. Okay, there is a queue called Return to Me. Does anybody know what that is? People use it? Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody not know? Does anybody, everybody okay? No, okay. So when you open up in Image Now, an invoice that's been sent to you from, let's say you print an image into Image Now, and you have a nice, when your list has basically nothing in it. You fill out the form that gives you some information, but you want to keep it in your queue. And for some reason you need to process it later. If you close it, it still has nothing on your list. If you use the return to, the way that works is, we've written programs so that every time you route an item out of your queue, it looks at the worksheet and fills in all of that information. It's called metadata, which I'll talk more in detail. It's the information associated with the invoice. Well, what you can do is if you route that to Return to Me, it'll go out, fill in those fields, and bring it right back to your queue. So the nice part is if you want to leave it in your queue, but you now at least I can see it's a pick invoice for this, I say route to Return to Me. The delete.
Oh, it's that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take a pick before. Take a pick. Which one of the 000 is it? So that's kind of, again, the idea is you keeping it in your queue, and you want to be able to know what it is you're dealing with. The delete invoice, everybody know about the delete invoice? Okay, delete invoice, just so you know, items stay in there for 7 days. So,
Oh,
it's one of those, it's before it goes away forever,
Yeah.
and like, oh, almost. Delete invoice, you can call us, we can pull it back for you. Stays out for 7 days and then automatically deletes itself. Again, just kind of go back, in the image now world, does everybody understand an archive and what that is? Does anybody go over that?
I've used it, but can you explain?
Okay, sure. So ImageNow is the giant repository of documents. They can be sitting in the repository, and then we assign metadata, information about it, and you can query that. And that just is sitting out there. That is, you can consider that could be the archive. Basically, it's out there. We can take any one of those documents and we can put it through a workflow, meaning that it starts to appear in queues that we've assigned where you can take it from place to place. The document is still the same document. It's still in archive, but it then is running through a workflow. What we do is at the end of a workflow, the document leaves workflow, but it's in archive. So if you wanted to get a document out of workflow and you still wanted to leave it around and you don't want to delete it, you route it to an archive queue. That we built a queue that does nothing more than take it out of workflow. Okay, so that's the process. So it's great. It's really giant. It's like a DocuShare for payables only-ish. Okay, so let's talk about the metadata. Let's see. Okay, who should I pick and who has got something on their queue? Who's got something in their queue?
I should.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I have one or two.
Okay, well, there we go. Okay. Where's Ben? Okay, there's Ben's queue. Okay.
Oh. Come on. Marine's been busy.
Yeah, well, I don't know, it's 29 days on the Emerald View, someone said not to pay an invoice.
Let's pick.
Okay, it's pick, who cares, who cares? All right, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go ahead and open an invoice and take a few minutes and talk about the metadata itself. I think it's important that you understand. So if you view properties, you can see this properties pane, which is hiding there, but this is the thing that has all of the detail that we assign from the worksheet called metadata, things about the invoice. Every invoice has to have a unique identifier, and the unique identifiers in the payable side is company number, vendor ID, invoice number, a fourth and a fifth field. Fifth field is built automatically, typically through Cindy or Farine, who are entering the items into the system. It's sort of a unique ID that not very significant. And this is the company name. So as long as these fields, these 5 fields are unique, it'll be a unique document. So when you copy a document, if you've done that, if you copy a document and you don't change the fields, you're going to get another version, another set of documents in that same page. So that's how we do it. That's how we know how to create a document that's unique, is one of these fields is different. Okay, so that's keys. More importantly, the other thing is also where it belongs to. So we have payables and we have improvement recs. Those are different drawers inside of the system. Those will be unique. But in addition to that, we have a slew of these things that we've created called custom properties. Metadata, information we can assign to an invoice. So I think it's important to understand, because doing queries, be able to find things, it's important to know what is available for you to query. So some of these are blatantly obvious. Check number and check amount. Those are the number that, if done well and all of the ducks in a row and all the magic happens, when an invoice is cut and Trish has finished her process, there's a program that runs through all of the copies of the checks that are printed and tries to figure out from there what invoices are being cut, and then it puts that information back into ImageNow. Every once in a while, it does have a problem. It gets confused. A usually figures it out because it gets a check with no backup. But this is filled in through that. That's the amount of the check that was associated with that. When Trish runs a process that gathers a series of checks to be run, it assigns this thing called check capture ID, mostly used so we can gather things for the check sign. Check company number is what's an I or an N, Immokalee or Naples, and then the company number. So not too significant, but it's used for sorting. The date of the check, okay. The check instructions, unless everybody needs a lesson on image now, are we good? Check instruction, invoice instructions? Okay. That's where you'll find the check instructions. So those, it'll be just those abbreviations are here. So if you wanted to find, red folders, check instruction, right? I don't remember now. Yeah, check instruction. If you were looking for something that would you could look for the RED in here, and that would, if you're running a query for some reason on that, that's how you would find it. The company name, the invoice amount, that comes from the form. The batch, when it goes over into Great Plains and it's pushed into Great Plains, the batch ID will be put into here. The invoice date from the form, the invoice instructions from the form, the long description, the big wide box, there.
I'm not coding in there yet.
What's that? It's okay.
Okay.
Fine. Long, okay, there's a little checkbox that says, is this on the check stub or not? That's this one. When the process that I built that takes your invoice from ImageNow and puts it into Great Plains, this date is filled in. When that date is filled in, the form is grayed out. So I don't do, the magic I'm doing is not a lot of magic. I'm hoping you don't change this, but I'm just showing you it's as simple as to allow you to rewrite an invoice. One of the things I have to do is change this back to the system default, which is this weird date. When I do that, the form is built to say, if the push date is January 5th, 1970, I'll let you then go ahead and do it. The reason we ask you to come to us is because I will always make sure that something isn't in Great Plains. Okay, although, if you try to push something again with the same company number, vendor ID, and invoice number, Great Plains will complain bitterly, but we try to help you out and stop you from doing that. There's your short description, the vendor ID, vendor name. As it goes into Great Plains, a unique identifier in the payable system is called the voucher number. It's an IM and a long number that's stuffed into here. The system, ImageNow has the ability to do what's called parallel routing. We do this out in Immokalee. We can actually take an invoice and route it to multiple people at the same time. And then when it finally all comes back together is only when it moves forward. So we have some things that go out to both Mike and Bob, and it moves its way out, and nothing happens until it comes back together again. And so this is being used for some of that. And then we have some other flags on the system as to whether or not, if the invoice is voided, Trish will run a process that will basically change this to a true. So the idea is we don't obviously want to include those in check runs. So, and if the check is voided, and then we had a special thing for Yardie, it's still hanging around. No.
I do like using that.
The assigned user is a field that's used in Immokalee. They can assign which user it's going to go to, and it appears there. And these are some of their routing that's here. Okay, now this area is probably one of the most important, the GL accounts and the profit centers. What I do is, when an invoice is routed out that has coding on it, I will go and find a unique list of GL accounts. So if you had 10 different GL lines with all kinds of different account numbers, I'll take those 10, just the GL account numbers, and separate them by semicolons. So let me find you one that exists out there. Let's go find some.
Is there one A in the SCB, A and D?
Is it in your queue or not?
I know it was being coded, but I don't know if it's back in there.
Okay, well, let me just, okay,
That might be-
so let's do a quick search. So let's do something. Here's some of my expenses. I'll open it up. Okay. Now, my form is hanging off the form. Let me go grab it. Okay, so take a quick look down here. Okay, so here is what we have down here. There's only one GL account. So I'm going to close that. What you'll see down here, and dangerous, I just screwed it up. Do not want to do that. So here's the GL account, unique GL profit center and account number. If there was another 1100, 2500, it would be 1100-7100 semicolon 1100-2500. So one of the things you can absolutely not do is query where the GL account equals, because it won't pick it up. So we use a contains capability, which I'll show you in a minute. So you want to be thinking very carefully about how you use these. Now, if you're looking for profit center, again, if there was only one profit center ever used, you'd be in good shape. But if there's more than one profit center, they're going to have semicolons. There is a maximum limit. I forget what it is. 100. There's some maximum limit. It's the number of characters I can store in that metadata. So if you have an invoice that has lots of coding, it may get truncated. So that's another reason why sometimes the query here may miss something. If it's a really complex distribution, there may be so much in the accounts that I just can't get it all on the string. Then, just to help you out, what I've done is I try to take the first 6 distribution lines and break them into individual pieces. So it'll handle up to 6 lines where it'll separate the amount of the line and the coding on that line. So again, not sure where you want to use that, but the system actually does that for the first 6 if you needed to query. And there's a few other, and then the 02400 customer is down here. Cindy uses that a lot. So that's the metadata. Let's go and do some querying. If there's anything else I want to do. Okay. So first of all, one of the simplest queries you can do is using the quick search. So the quick search lets you drop down and it uses one of those 5 main key fields: company number, vendor ID, invoice number, vendor name, at a minimum, and you can quickly search by that. So I did here I was going to vendor ID, starts with my name, and here are these are the options available. And when the biggie here is the contain. So if you on the key fields, probably you're not going to find semicolons, but if you're going to start querying any of that metadata, like the GL account number that has semicolons, you want to keep that in mind. Okay, so those are easy searches. Now, you're all probably familiar with a lot of these searches on the left-hand side. So let's talk about how they actually got created, or how you can create your own. But before I do that, I wanted to drop down and tell you about one other one. How many of you use the full text search? 1. Okay. 2. When a document goes through ImageNow, completes the payables process, completes the check, and the check is printed, we send it off into the background to be doing through what's called OCR. And OCR takes the image and tries to make characters out of it, best it can. Does a pretty good job. And now, with a full text search, I can search for the content of the document. So I'm going to say the full text contains, this is probably a bad one, I'm going to look for the word hammer anywhere it exists inside of any invoice in all of Perceptive Content. There's 117 documents. Oh, and by the way, the bad news is this function is going away. I'll show you the new feature. Versus the new version of Perceptive Content removed this out of here, and they moved it to a different place. Yeah, I don't know why. Don't comment. But on the right-hand side, you can get a sense from here that this document shows the word hammer 26 times. So let's go in and look, and it's good. There's a good chance, of a 98.33% chance that matches.
And you didn't even print a check for it.
I didn't even print a check for it. Let's see what it is.
What the hell is that?
I have a long story about Doug Baird and hammers. That's why it comes back to mind. You probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I heard that. I heard that story.
What it shows you is, you notice in highlight, it finds on this particular version shows you where it is. Let me close this because you don't need the properties. It shows you where it is on the page and let you find it on the page as best as it thinks it can. There is the word hammer right here. So this is huge when you're paying your invoices with the Visa cards.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to find things all the time. Like, I know what I bought, but it's out there somewhere. I can't find it. It's on a Visa. Which Visa is it on? I find this to be invaluable. Okay, So let's take a moment and take you to what it's going to look like, or what they're thinking about it's going to look like in the future. Where's my little, oh, here it is. So they're replacing this with something called enterprise search. What you're seeing here is about 1,000 times better than where it was when it started. I've actually been working with Highland, and they're actually sort of developing the way this looks based on us and other customers that said what you first delivered was horrendous. And this is a whole lot better. So here I'm going to do the same hammer query. Oh, not a yammer, a hammer. I'll run the hammer query. I gotta get tight. And what you see is not something a little different, but the same concept. We see places where this appears. I'm having this conversation about only showing 10 so many at a time. That was driving me crazy. We're talking about that. But you can go in and find the word hammer. So it works very similar, but you're outside of. Uh-oh.
It's a last
Name.
Uh-oh. So there you see, we can look at. So this is conception of the new interface. Some other there is a histogram of over time in documents where hammer appeared. There's going to be a natural language where you can use words instead of these drop-down boxes. So it is enhanced in feature. It just still has a ways to go. They're getting better. So
When is
that,
expected
and
to
this is
come?
holding me up from going to the new release. I absolutely could not have taken away the full text. I know, I couldn't have taken away that feature and gone to this release. So they're still working on this. It's getting better and it's getting closer. So, okay.
Would
So-
that be an image now?
No,
or
there'll be, we'll give you a
perspective?
shortcut. There'll be a shortcut to a website. It's a website that talks to and looks at ImageNow documents as they're created, and you'll be searching it.
So it's not even an application in image?
No, it's not. That's the part that frustrates me. It's there's no drop down. That drop down's going to disappear when it says full text. You'll have to go to this website to bring up to query the documents.
Who thought that was a good idea?
Yeah.
Highland, Perceptive at one point acquired a company that built this enterprise search. Highland, in their infinite wisdom, who then purchased Perceptive, thought, man, why do we have these competing things? We'll just take that out and do this. It is a lot better than what it was before. I mean, but believe me. But it's a shame that it's not integrated. But those are decisions that are out of our hands. And we need to move forward because we have to stay fairly recent with ImageNow. They're on 7.3, we're on 7.16. So that's not awful, but we've got to basically move forward. So, okay, so that's a very cool feature, is that full text that you can do from here. Okay, so you can look at any of the keys, but here's the search window. Okay, so if you wanted to build a search, well, first of all, we obviously know you can do like these searches, which prompt a series of things. And what those prompts are doing is they're building a query. Cancel. And the query is back here. And they're building a query that's querying that metadata. So all the information I showed you we filled in, as it gets filled in, that's what's from there. So how do you build one? Okay, let me go and close the search. So you use this plus button to start building a query. You can query on the document keys. The document keys are those major items that identify a document uniquely. Is it a payables document? Which company is it? Which vendor? So you can do a query on any of those at a minimum. So if I was looking for company, I would do query with that. I can query on dates. I can say when something was last viewed, when it was created, when it was modified. So I could write a query, give me all of the invoices for company 435 that were created on March 1st, if you wanted to, whatever.
About were paid.
Now, this is not paid yet. This is created. That means this is created.
Okay.
So the other thing we can do is we can use those custom properties. And guess what? what was one of those properties? Check date. So why not be able to write a query that says, give me all of the company 435 where the check date is?
Right, oh, cool. That's good.
So, yes,
But you already have one of those.
we already have one of those. Right, that's true. So what happens is, these were all built off of someone building a combination of these, and then giving it a name and saving it and making it available to everybody. But the idea is, we'll just build a couple real quickly. You can build your own and save them and make them yours, and they're only yours because they may be something you do uniquely. But you don't want to have to type the company in every single time because you're dealing with one company most of the time. Or maybe you want to create a BCP, checks, invoices, inquiry, and not have to type 435 every time. You can build one and then give it a name, and it becomes yours and available only to you. And you can then do that way. So let's suppose we wanted to do something as simple as that. So we wanted to say, from the document keys, the company number is equal to 435, and we want to say a custom property. We say check date, and I'm just going to put a particular date in here. It was yesterday. Did we do check runs yesterday?
Yes, that's like.
Okay, so there's one thing we can do. So if I run this query, there's all of the company 435 with check date that. Well, that seems great, but my God, now what do I do about making this able to, put in any check date I like? When you come up to this query, if you click on a line, you can change, instead of type normal, we can use prompted, and then it comes up with a message. You give it a message, and now when you type push go, up comes a prompt. So that allows you, instead of having it hard-coded, so I can now pick, and it knows it's a date, so it has all the wonderful things assigned to dates.
That's not
So that's-
check date.
Oh, sorry, did I pick the wrong date? What did I pick?
You picked Wednesday.
Thank you. I'm hoping it was. So there's the same query, but this time I never have to type the company number, and it just asks me for a prompt date. So let's suppose I said, oh, I love this one, I want to use this one. And so I can say, on here, what I can do is, right up on the top, there's a couple of buttons, I can hit here and save it. These are called filters. I call them queries, and you can give it a name. And now, I'll just cancel it. And now, there's one right here. And that's mine. I can edit these. I can modify the ones that are created. These are the ones I've created. Like we did a whole thing for CRC one time. So I have a CRC one out here. I can come to here and I can delete it. When I'm done with it, I don't like it. I can delete it. Or if I wanted to run this other one that say, these are everything that probably someone stuffed in with a printed image now, and the pages disappeared. There's like 60 pages where it's in the system, it has no values assigned to it, and it's not in workflow. Probably shouldn't even be in here. So that's how I find these and clean them up every once in a while. So you can build any query you like, and it becomes yours, only available to you. Okay? But more than that, you can also add columns to it. So you can pick other columns if you like. It has to be, so one of the metadata that we have, if you have a query and you want to add some additional data, that's part of the metadata.
Account number?
Again, remember what I showed you, so let's look at this one, let's look at this query, and let's add in the, I want to add, so I'm going to go and pick, I'm going to pick I have access to more than you do. So here, I'll pick the GL account, let's say, okay, say okay. Now, actually that was dumb, I should have done that on my query. We do that on.
Deleted your query.
I deleted my query. We'll just do account invoices. Now, let me do, what's a quick one here? Okay, I'll just do a nasty one. You don't, not all the fields are prompted, you have to fill in. If you don't, it will just do a query without that, and you are limited to a certain number of documents, because otherwise we let you query the entire payable since 2000, whatever it is that I obviously didn't know. Okay, so. Oh, sorry, add. I'm gonna pick GL account. What am I looking at? Why am I looking at?
It's over on the right,
Yeah, but I'm not seeing.
but there's nothing there,
The,
GL account.
That's confusing me, so I'm not sure why I'm not seeing that. But yes, you should be.
Because the lookup you went into maybe?
Could be,
I don't know.
but the point is, yes, you can pick other columns on your private query that are any one of the metadata, you can add it on there. If you're in your query, in your filter, if you prompt for something, it will automatically be on the list, but if you wanna add something that you're not prompting for, you can add it on there.
But we can't add it to like the queue, like a whole queue. You couldn't add account number to that
No,
queue.
you can't do that. If there's something like that that would be useful for everybody, I control those.
Mm-hmm.
So I control the look and feel of the filters that appear on a queue.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's something that would be helpful to you or to everybody and you would like to do that, send me an IT request. So yes, like if there's something that would be very helpful in a particular queue, that if we had that, it'd be really great all the time, it's not hard for me to modify those things. So each queue as it comes up has a filter assigned, has a filter and a set of columns assigned to it. Just like the ability to add this sum here was a feature we added.
And that's another question. Not every, you can't sum everywhere.
Yeah,
Well,
not
you-
some screens.
Some stuff you
doesn't
can't,
allow.
some place you won't.
There are
won't
certain
sum.
queues,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it probably hasn't been turned on by me.
like the AM and CDQ.
Yeah, just send me an IT request.
Awesome.
Yeah, send me a request, happy to do it.
Thank you.
It's certainly happy to do it.
So you have to turn that on? I mean, you
Yeah,
should be able
it's,
to
yeah,
add
it's a feature I add to it. It's a feature I have to add, and I can add, you can sum more than one column, but most of the time the only thing that makes sense is invoice number, but, you know, if you had a check amount column, we could sum that too. It doesn't necessarily make any sense. So, yes, I can say, I want a sum on this thing, and I want, which sums I wanna do it. It's part of my setup. Okay, so quick search, setting searches. Okay, we're almost done. It's 1:35. We've gone over our time. Do you want to cut off until we have 5 more minutes? Okay. So some other future news. A lot of you here in accounting use your Skype for Business where you talk to each other. July of 2021, it's going away. Thank you, Microsoft. I don't know why. It's just one of those things that, so they have come up with.
Is that what that thing is that pops up every time?
That, yes. So that's, and guess what? You're about to start using it. Teams is what they're going to tell us we're going to. Teams, Microsoft Teams. So what is Microsoft Teams? It's a generic area that allows you to have a group of people put together in a team of your choice and to group them and then have communication about that. So for example, I've created some of my own teams. Like we have a project called SOD IoT Monitoring. And I have, within this team, we have different channels or chats. We have a chat we're going on about the status. Now the advantage of this is persistent. So unlike if you have an IM conversation, okay, or if you, let's say a text message, sometimes if you come into a text message later on, you may not see the whole history. You can go in and I have a whole history of the conversation, and I can be brought on in the middle and still go backwards in time and see that conversation. Teams also allows you to put files into here. Now these are not backed up on our system, these are in the Microsoft cloud.
Are they safe?
Microsoft cannot give us the ability to restore. They'll do their best effort-ish, so be cautious. If you're putting something here, it's in their cloud, we're hoping that they'll be able to help us if that happens, but if I go to them, they're gonna say, doing the best I can, sorry we can't. So it's one of those things where it's a good place if you wanna share something, but if it's something, if it's something that's more permanent, ultimately you're gonna wanna put it somewhere else.
Okay.
The advantage of putting here is when you start putting in here, there's some sharing and other sharing features and collaboration features that start to happen within Excel when you start sharing documents.
Is it safe for sensitive data?
It is those people in a channel, the person who creates the channel is the channel owner. The channel owner can then decide who is going to be on the team. So someone else who's not been invited can see anything on that team. It's still in the Microsoft Cloud. So that being said, so for example, I have this, you would know, I have this channel. So the answer is,
You get the option when you're creating a team if you want it to be public
or private, exactly. So public channels, which
Public,
is, yes. Now, we don't have call-in capabilities inside of this system. We did not pay for that feature, so we can't use this as a phone system. But you can have chats. So here I am, so and Microsoft Teams can be on your phone. So Amanda and I are going to say,
Oh, boy.
There's an app for that.
there's an app for that. So you can send messages and
Yeah. It actually notifies me this time.
if you have nothing else to do, you can send gifts. Yeah, and so you can send gifts, you can send stickers, and here, look, everybody, see? Yeah, if anybody has been in another company and used something or has heard something called Slack, so it's a team collaboration system. This is Microsoft's concept. My daughter works for a company where they work across the country, and they're not in any one place, and that's how they work. So it's a collaboration methodology. One of the other advantages of this is you can notify anybody that's been on our Microsoft Cloud, which anybody who has Office. If you're in the middle of a conversation, you can do an and put the person's name in there, and if they'll be notified if they have Teams that there's something that you need to look at here. So you could have a conversation going on about a particular project. Maybe you're working on budgets, and you want to have a collaboration conversation. So inside of your channel, maybe you want to create inside of your team, you want to create a channel about 2020 budgets. You could have a conversation about it, go back and forth, and someone who comes in can go back and look at the history and see the conversation, and not just sort of get stuck in the middle. There are ways to actually bring people in from the outside of our organization, and I don't know a lot more about this in Teams, and we're still learning about it, but this is ultimately where it's going to be at as we move forward. So it's something to think about. We'll have to learn more about it. We'll have to figure out what kind of training we can offer up.
All right, when I get an email, I get a notification, and if I click on that notification, it opens up another window on my computer.
In Teams?
But if I try and reply back in that screen, it doesn't want to
Is
work.
this a Teams thing?
No. And then it freezes email. And
No,
then
wait,
it
wait,
freezes
wait,
up
wait.
Outlook.
Wait.
Outlook froze up on me 2 or 3 times this morning.
You get a notification from where?
An email notification, I see the little screen pop
Mhm.
up on my computer.
Okay.
If I click on that, it opens a bigger screen, and if I try and reply there, it doesn't want to work.
Okay, we'll have to look at
And
it.
it freezes up the
I
Outlook.
will tell you that Outlook, continues to change on a regular
And I
basis.
was like,
Like, we're having an issue now, if you send an email directly from Acrobat, it will freeze Outlook.
Yep.
And not immediately.
Yep.
Sometimes it's like
Yeah.
a few minutes
I
later.
did do that.
It's like you're working, and all of a sudden it's like, what?
Mhm.
Yeah, so,
I did
so
do
we're
that.
recommending not going directly from Acrobat. Sometimes Image Now hangs up. Outlook is constantly changing, it's like anything, it's a piece of software, so they may fix the problem. I mean, we're getting updates once a month on that thing nowadays. It's
I
just,
know.
it's
Mine
insane,
needs
it's
an update
insane.
right now.
It's insane. We have little control. The advantage of going to the office, going to Microsoft Office in the cloud, is we get all this software, we get all these features like this. The disadvantage is the updates are coming down faster, and it's happening on our computers too, in the OS. So something to think about is Teams. And one last piece I just want to mention as we move forward, I don't think I have it, is that as we move, I'm working on someday, if I get time in my life, we are going to replace Team Server with a SharePoint in the cloud. Will it be slower? No, I think it's going to be better.
We're gonna create shortcuts
Well, it's
to
going to be
speed
better.
up.
It's
Because
going to
we
be
have
better.
wait for
Not
our
for Amy though.
miracle.
Not for Amy though.
No, it's not.
God, I can't type. No, I mean Amy thinks that. I'm going to try to prove her that she's not right. but I haven't approved. It was one of but it was one of Andrew's projects and he never got to it.
For reviewing bank recs.
Oh, really?
Even-
Mhm.
Oh,
Accounting.
goodness gracious.
Accounting is
Got a
spelled
typo.
out.
Oh, goodness gracious, you can see, I should have put a shortcut, but I was just thinking about this today. Oh, okay, so there'll be a site like our team server, but it's gonna be in the cloud. So that at some point you'll start hearing me talk about this and we'll be playing with this and trying this out. Should operate similar, but it's going to have slightly different look-ish. You know, but the idea is conceptually that we're gonna have, you know, we'll have the same sort of drill throughs and places to put things. That's
So
coming.
would that make it easier for the managers to access their budget files or something? If it's just a read only, cause I don't want them changing their budget.
Is it gonna make it any different? It's no different than what we have now. It's just up in the Microsoft cloud. But again, if there's something we want to do, let's talk about it, because we may, like, there are
I don't know how
permissions.
many times I get a request for their recent budget file.
Right, so there are.
I gotta download it off of Team Server and email.
Right, so what we could probably do is, so remember that at least my original intent with Team Server was short-term storage, you know, not long-term archiving.
Well, I'm talking
The current
current year or the last
There
year.
are, we could talk about sending them a URL link, we could talk about giving them read-only permissions, so there are some options. Let's talk about it. So, that's my pile of stuff.
And that's something, like going back to your interns a year ago, that Jordan helped you.
Right, Jordan has helped me take, and there's a process that goes behind the team server now, as you put things in and do a workflow that Amy gets involved in and Cindy gets involved in, and there's processes have to change and we go this way, but this is coming. I just have to get time to do it, because we really need to move on. The infrastructure we have inside is aging, and it has its issues. We just had an outage this week, where you couldn't put documents up there. Was that this week or last week? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, we're getting more nervous about the internal infrastructure on that. So that's my,
Don't
yes.
tell me that.
Okay.
This is a tad bit
Back
off
up,
topic.
back up.
DocuShare.
Mhm.
It's slower
Can you speed it
than
up?
slow than slow.
In what area? When you bring in,
Opening, going from the next, like,
Going
clicking
into
entity into
entities.
a document, into the,
so when you click on
Selections,
entities, and the
it's-
number of entities there is a major issue.
right.
Right, so we have to make some decisions. The problem is, one thing we could do is we could pull out active and inactive entities, because what we have is every one of our
Oh, yeah,
entities there.
there's a lot of it.
The downside of that is there's a lot of processes that are built to put things in based on where they're located. So one way to do that is, if your list of things that you're looking at is smaller, it'll come up much faster. So that's what is continuing to slow it down. So we have to think carefully about that and the implications of that, but yes, that is definitely something I think we ought to think about, is taking and creating the, basically less active or inactive entities and move them to another collection, so your list is much smaller. So when you click
Right.
entities, you'd have a much smaller
Yeah,
list.
Yeah, that can be helpful.
Another thing you could do is, if there's like 3 or 4 or 5 entities that you use a lot, those are all URLs, they're all shortcuts. So you could basically create shortcuts and open right up to you don't have to go through entities. Did you know, you didn't know that? All right, let's take a
I'm
minute.
finding there's a lot I don't know.
It's a good thing you suggested this.
So every location inside of DocuShare, let me get